The Provoke Podcast, brought to you by Provoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.
We're talking all about blueberries and transformation today here on the Provoke Media Podcast. I'm Megan Keoghan, host of today's episode and head of content partnerships here at Provoke. Transformation is not possible without innovation, and creativity is the foundation for transformation. How do we enable courageous creativity in all aspects of our work? What does this mean for communicators and leaders alike? With us today are Padilla's Heath Ruddock and U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council's Casey Cronquist to discuss the relationship between creativity and courage and why innovation is everyone's responsibility. Heath and Casey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. So good to be part of this.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, let's kick it off with you, Heath, from Padilla. Let us know a little bit about your role at Padilla and why you're so excited to talk about blueberries today.
Thank you. Look, I struggle with the roles and titles, but my job is Chief Creative Officer of the Padilla group of brands across North America. So we have a multiple group of brands, and then also function as one whole agency. Why am I excited with blueberries? Look, it's pretty obvious they're delicious. Casey's not forcing me to say that they're good for you, but we've worked with the U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council for, I think, 3 decades now. And so we've really been part of incredible growth, like from day one. And so the opportunity to join forces once again with Casey when he joined the organization and begin a new chapter was super exciting, and one we'll talk a little bit more about.
Thank you so much. And Casey, a little bit about your role at the council and what we're here to chat about today.
You bet. Yeah. So president of the U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council, I've been here for just over 3 years now, and I've been in the commodity space running programs like this for the last 15 years. And so the blueberry opportunity came along. As Heath said, it's an exciting category to be in. Everybody loves blueberries. It's hard to run into somebody who has an aversion to them at all. So, to be able to be working in this space and then taking it to the next level, which is, I know what we're going to talk about today, was something that was really inspiring for me, thinking about, my next position in this kind of industry and this kind of work we do. So it's been what I hoped for, and I'm really excited about what we're up to.
Well, I think let's give our listeners a little background, just a little foundation to your relationship together on the campaign and what we're here really talking about today, which is creativity informing transformation, and sort of the overview of just what has transformed in the last 5 years with the Blueberry Council, blueberries as a commodity and a brand, and really like what has driven this change. So I'm going to start with you, Heath, who you shared with me as we were kind of prepping for this conversation, Padilla's sort of motto or stance about all the work that you do, which is to make it better. And I think, as you guys were prepping me and briefing me on blueberries for the last couple of weeks, we talked a lot about what made it better and how much that sort of drove some of the success of this campaign.
Look, not to put too fine a point on it, but, we live in a particularly interesting period. I mean, once upon a time, things used to be relatively straightforward and pretty linear. But thanks to a multiplicity of things, not the least of which is the technologies that we all use from the minute we wake up in the morning till our head hits the pillow again, the only real constant today is that it's going to change tomorrow, right? We used to have much longer timelines for just about everything. And the reality is we've got to be prepared to adjust constantly. And so this concept of sort of transforming things, it's a constant transformation. It's a constant evolution rather than what used to be kind of, here's the big idea, here's the thing, the game changer, here's the thing that's going to revolutionize everything. Sometimes it's incremental. Sometimes it's, it's a lowercase t for transformation, that it is just this incremental push. Now, we need that singular strategy and that single thought, that the flag we put on the horizon to all shoot for. But that's why we were really excited at this concept of that Casey and the team presented to us, because it felt like we need a strategic point of view. We need to reset the conversation here. But we also understand that we've got to bring everyone with us. We've got to bring growers with us, producers with us. We've got to bring retailers. We've got to bring consumers with us. At the end of the day, they're the ones we want to have grabbing handfuls of blueberries at the in the produce area.
And really, Casey, that last bit that Heath just mentioned, which is this matrix of stakeholders. You weren't tasked with just putting blueberries in the hands of grocery store shoppers. You were tasked with this idea of bringing growers, producers, retailers all along for the ride to really transform blueberries as a brand. Speak to me a little bit about the challenge that you faced with that.
Yeah, I think the challenge is how do you unite an industry to say the same thing the same way together and be the loudest as we can in a really busy consumer environment. And that's the challenge. It is true that when you think of it from a straight marketing perspective, you're putting your feet in the shoes of consumers. You're trying to think about it the way they're thinking about it, and we do that. But in many respects, our first audience is our producer group, and it's thinking through that value chain of stakeholders who are going to also be needed and necessary to carry that message. And so we're in that unique position as a commodity board of trying to unite that value chain and trying to, take advantage of all of the stakeholders and the roles that they play in marketing the fruit along the way. So whether you're a U-picker who's inviting people onto your farm, or you're someone who's, selling to a major food manufacturer or a retailer, we had to kind of find that sweet spot of a call to action or a brand that would help inspire that entire value chain together. And that's the unique position we're in as a commodity board, but that's also what I think makes this such a successful story.
Which really brings us to the, I could say, red thread or the blue thread of this whole story, which is
there you go.
It's the blue thread.
It's the blue thread for the sake of this podcast. Heath, a bit about what that blue thread was in terms of a tagline and how we got there.
Yeah, well, look, one of the reasons I love working in this business at the moment is because we don't just have that sort of relatively single focus, that single dimension of audience that we are expected to activate our strategies with. I mean, I guess it's the complexity of that matrix which makes it really intriguing to myself and to the Padilla team. What's more challenging is especially when you're coming at this having worked on it for a long time. I haven't personally worked on it for 30 years, but when an organization has worked on it for 30 years, some days it feels like it, Casey, doesn't it?
I was going to say, you don't look quite old enough to have been on it for 30 years, but not that everybody can see you.
Yeah, the truth is this unlearning. So you've got to kind of let go of a lot of stuff. And Casey and I and the team have talked at great length about, okay, let's leave that bit behind for a little while and consider what could be. When we did that, all of a sudden you start to unearth these elements of success, these things that are really important to all these different stakeholders. And that's when you look for the commonalities, right? That's when you use, we have such a bonus in that the science behind blueberries is it's so definitive. There's no arguing. Okay, great. We've got something brilliant. Now we've just got to look for the thing that excites, because, we've got to this has to be an emotional thing for everyone to get and then sort of, I guess, figuratively and literally pull the drawstrings in on that entire matrix and tighten it up. Because our job was really to take the goodness of what we had called this little blue dynamo and really unlock that potential. And so our consumers, retailers, distributors, producers, growers, everyone can feel this new position, because they need to feel like it's of value to them and then rally behind it. And that was a really important part of this. It's not saying, hey, we just sold more blueberries to a consumer. This is, we have momentum, a serious, let's call it the blue wave, to get it out there. This is a careful one, to get people excited, to get people to buy into it.
So when you talk about, cinching up those drawstrings, really part of the I guess tagline of the mission also became the tagline of the Blueberry, which is, I don't know which one of you would like to introduce it to our listeners today, but we are grabbing some blue.
Casey, it was my gift to you, so you can
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, well, it's grab a boost of blue, and I like what Heath said, because so much of the blueberry success has been built on the foundation of health research, and it's just known. Any corner you go into of what we work through is just it's a recognized healthy fruit. But as Heath said, it's also kind of the sacred cow that you had to let go of, because you had to be thinking in this new iteration on what is it that we're calling consumers to in the future. And so a lot of what's exciting about this fruit is the genetics that are going into it, and the work that's being done by the producers, that the idea of grab a boost of blue, that term boost is for some going to imply health, could imply energy, could imply flavor. So when you're using it as an ingredient, and so what was really exciting about this call to action was really how it starts to pay tribute to the past, the health research, the foundation, but it's also looking forward. It gives us a lot of running room to talk about what that boost means to the consumer who's thinking about buying it.
Yeah, I love that you called out the boost there, because that is truly the operative word, right? So it supports the science, it supports the true health benefits, which is fantastic. But I can tell you, growers and retailers love a boost to their bottom line. Amen. And when you unpack this, I think the layers to it were really important to make sure. And that was the secret of getting people to buy into this. Is it a call to action? Yeah, it sure is. Like, get out there and get them. But it also represents the result that we're looking for, which is to shift volume. And it's volume of a commodity is the game, right?
Which is such a good way to really summarize your perspective of transformation being fueled by creativity. We're often inclined to think of creativity as our markers and our crayons, or our, kind of brainstorm rooms, but there was so much creative strategy that went into this. I'd love to be, if you can take us into the brainstorm room or the huddles where you tossed around all the different taglines, and a little bit about how you kind of got to this particular one.
Yeah, you don't really want to be in that. It gets pretty ugly and smelly. It starts to smell like people after a while, for sure. Yeah. Look, the truth is, there is no magic bullet to this. There is no lock yourselves in a room and ta-da, here it is. It is honestly, it is the result of a multiplicity of elements. There is the knowledge that you acquire over time, meeting growers, spending times in the fields, like talking to them while you're munching on these things fresh off the top of the bush. That is as vital in getting to this decision, because you learn then what matters to them, what matters to that farmer, is really important. What matters to the retailer? Like, clearly they all want the same result, but what matters to them is in many respects different. So it's grabbing all that information, all the quality and quantity of stuff, unlearning, as I mentioned, like unlearning a lot of stuff, because that can be a real hindrance. Connecting to Casey, because Casey has a plan. Casey and the team had set a new set of goals. And then it's like scratching your head for a while, and sometimes just walking away for it to go, oh man, like what is the answer here? And honestly, sometimes it just comes at the 11th hour. You're like, oh, it's right under our nose, like it's sitting right. And then you feel you're stupid because you've just spent so many hours trying to get to it. But what we liked about this position was that, as I think all good lines, all good ideas do, they have multiple facets. It means something to many people. You can unpack it different ways. No one likes to be told to do anything, but if you can relate to something that is in that line and the story we build around it, then it's going to work for you. And I do remember Casey, almost these words. I'm going to paraphrase you because I'm not going to get exactly right, but that's it. Like I can remember the look on your eyes when you're like, because he felt it. He felt the line. He didn't just hear it. And I knew that we'd got to that point. Of course, the proof was in the pudding when we had to roll it out to the committee and we had to roll it out to that was the next nervous moment, right?
That was nerve-wracking.
Tell us a little bit about that moment, Casey, about getting your initial buy-in from your committee.
Yeah, that was an intense series of weeks, actually, because it was. I wouldn't say this was rushed. I think but the idea was that we were moving into a budget cycle that needed this to be done. It needed it. It was almost a long time in the making, even though that the creative process was probably really truncated compared to what Heath would have liked. Yeah. But the idea of putting it in front of them, we had, this had originally started as a conversation between our promotion chair and myself and Boulder, just walking down the street talking about some of the challenges that we're facing with what had historically been being done with our promotion and campaign work. And really it was a conversation about how quickly we were moving from kind of one campaign to the next and a difficulty for essentially the audience of stakeholders, which are our paying assessment growers, to keep up with what creatively was taking place. And so, what we were bringing forward was not just monumental in its creative, but it was monumental shift for the industry to invest and stay invested strategically into the next iteration of our work that could be then, promoted to be used universally in a united way. So there was a lot that had gone from that conversation in Colorado to what was being presented now finally in front of the committee in time to be moving into a budget cycle for the next year. And so I remember that meeting very clearly on just, there were certainly options, but as Heath said, there was just one in the mix that this was, really where we were all hoping things were going to land. And as you would think and hope that, the best thing kind of rises to the top, and it did that day. And the overwhelming support walking away from that meeting was so rewarding because everybody had felt like that we had landed on the thing and that this would be universally accepted. This would be something that, marketers, which are the folks who work with the retailers in our industry to help sell blueberries into the consumers, would be adopting this. I mean, we were getting commitments in the room to what conceptually was being proposed there. And so that just kind of gave you that sense of confidence that, okay, here we go. This is going to work.
Yeah, that was really joyful to me. As an industry, I think sometimes we're very quick to separate B2B, B2C. Like we create all these kind of let's be honest, fictitious categories for what we do, when truly at the end of the day, what we need to do is to create something that motivates and connects to individuals, because they're all people still. And to hear that unified response was really exciting to me, because it was proof that the importance of creativity in that moment to help just transform that moment in the room for Casey was first win. And it tends to be when you feel it in that early time, or when you start to see those early results, you got something. You got a winner. Then, of course, you've got to put the energy in behind it, because it's not magic. You've got to put get the positivity behind it.
What was some of that early energy that was kind of like the initial injection behind your strategy? Because, we have this really clever tagline here, but there was obviously a creative rollout. There was obviously different types of messaging to your different stakeholders within that matrix. What did that early phase look like?
Casey, do you want to answer how you rolled that out within the team? Because it happened there first.
Yeah, I would say, part of the phase in for this was picking up on the commitments that were in that room that day and establishing a licensing program for the brand. So we knew that this was going to be something that, we also wanted to be able to control as an organization. So while we wanted it to be, something that was ubiquitous amongst our industry, we still needed to control the brand. It was still something that was part of the instructions coming out of that meeting. This has to stay managed. And so even though we were looking at, sharing this broadly, not hiding the football. This was going to be a playbook we wanted everybody to have. We started off by licensing it to the industry. So licensing it back, the creative back to the industry. And that took off. So that was really helpful because you started to get the commitments across, companies that were providing the stickers or the labels or the packs. I mean, we had some really creative stuff come back where they were starting to show us how they were going to adopt this into their program. And we're still seeing that adoption today. And so that part was the very beginning of just getting our own team, so to speak, involved. But then it was, like I said, that budget process that was going to start to infuse resources behind getting this out there. And so, all that started to come together. And it was happening at the same time that we had just launched a new strategic plan that was calling for USHBC as its own vision to make blueberries the world's favorite fruit. And so now you've got this call to action that is starting to take a look at not just kind of the domestic landscape of marketing, but also looking at the globe and how do we grab a boost of blue in Southeast Asia and how do we take this into India. And so all of this is part of the conversation that was going on internally about with our in-country reps in these markets, where how do you use grab a boost of blue and how does it translate into these countries? So that was the beginning of kind of rolling this out. And at that same time, it was the first real effort in kind of merchandising at retail that we started to step into. So we immediately started using pilot programs for this campaign into retail. Which was super exciting for our industry to see. You could see where it was being adopted by merchandisers at retail and, down to, even issuing hats to all the retailers that were participating in this program and them wearing it in the produce department. So it was an exciting beginning and something that we're obviously still building off of today.
Yeah, it was, it's relief, I guess, is the first energy, the first thing you feel in that moment, certainly from a creative leader's perspective. But there's also that sense of excitement that, okay, we're onto the field now, like it's game day. And our job almost plays that of a supporting role in a way. And so as Casey activates his teams and his organization in its different parts, starts to sort of get hold of these pieces, we sort of go into that support role to some point. But also my account partners, for sure, are taking a strategic partnership role with many members of Casey's organization and beyond. And so then we get into that real push to drive the ball to the places we need to drive it. And so that's whether it's beyond the shores of the United States, for sure, whether it's into new retailers, whether it's reinvigorating parts of markets that have maybe waned a little. That's the really exciting bit, when you start to see it present itself. And when you get sort of emails at nighttime from people who've seen a sticker on a punnet somewhere in a store and say, look, oh my goodness, here it is here. And you're going, yes, it's getting there, it's getting out.
When you talk so much in the beginning, we talked a lot about like the, transformation is really about an evolution. It's not a stagnant or static moment in time. What was sort of like that journey walking together as, agency and client, like as you started to embark on the transformation? Like, to your point, Heath, you were on the field, with your tagline, but it certainly didn't stop there. In fact, the work started there in a lot of ways. And I don't know which one of you wants to take it first, but I'm curious from hearing from both your perspectives, what that kind of transformational journey was like working together.
Well, I think it was an interesting time for both, I would say, Padilla historically and maybe organizationally, and our organization. So there was a lot of transformation taking place in both organizations at that time. And so I think when you have these changes taking place, for us, at least in my role back in 2019, this was pre-pandemic, and I was looking at, where we stood as an industry. We had this, kind of glut of frozen blueberries in storage, and there was just a lot that was on the line for what this program would do next. And so there needed to be change, right? So I remember very much bringing, some of my famous buttons into the meeting rooms, which said, because we've always done it this way, with a line through it. And just making it clear that, what we had been doing is not going to be the thing that we're going to continue to do as we move forward from here, because we needed bigger ideas. We needed change. We needed something that was going to solve some of the challenges that were being presented on my desk. And so on the side for Padilla, and I'll let Heath speak to it on from his perspective, but it was, kind of from their perspective, probably too, like what got us here as an agency representing blueberries is not going to help them necessarily accomplish this challenge. And so it was just the timing was right. And of course, as we went into the pandemic, kind of the tables turned on everybody, but we had set the foundation of transformation and innovation, prior to that. And that helped us carry that theme and that conversation throughout some really challenging times. And I think in the end, it proved its worth in being able to move that forward.
Yeah, Casey hit it on the head. We were both, almost paralleling our own sort of transformative moments, our own sort of evolutions. And, we had, I mentioned earlier, like letting go is really important. As a creative leader, kind of part of what I like to do. You know what I mean? Like we're always sort of hunting for what's fresh and different. How can we rethink something is a really important part of the role. That really scares a lot of people, and that's okay. That's okay. This concept of doing things differently it's the unknown, and that can be really nerve-wracking for some people. It's the task. I mentioned bringing people with you as an organization for the brand. It's the same internally. And so, when Casey, when I received a version of one of those buttons, and I kind of giggled, to be perfectly honest, because they're fighting words. Like there's a battle flag up the mast. I'm going, okay, everyone, it's game on. Let's go. We have permission, everyone, by the way, from the client to go for it. And I think that was the energy we needed. Like that was all those who were anxious about pushing into fresh territory needed, was that reinforcement that we can do this. Like we have permission to push harder. And that's a really important role, actually, of the creative leader within the organization, is not to bully things through, not to say, well, don't you get it? It's to really bring everyone with you. Because we don't all come from the same place. We don't all have the same reasons for being in the office. And it's that diversity of thinking. It's that diversity of background, of individual that really changes the game. And that's what Casey, through that button, kind of helped trigger, which is brilliant. It's brilliant. It's exciting.
I love just thinking about seeing that on your desk, and that physical reminder to go for it is pretty cool.
So simple.
It's so simple, and it really says so much. And I have to think, as a creative leader, it must have been a pretty thrilling moment to just like have the free reign to go bring the idea to life. Yeah,
when you see the fire in your team's eyes, like that hunger, and that's a really important thing, And I mentioned the word permission. And I think as a takeaway for anyone listening to this, what I love that Casey did within the organization, he gave the team permission within USHBC to go for it. You can only push. That's the option. And often in agencies, we tend to get a little anxious about, of course, we've got to run our own businesses. The world has forced us to be more risk averse, but there's risk and there's intelligent decisions, right? Like there's risk and there's understanding where the potholes have been in the past, having learned from that and going for it, because based on everything you have, the science you have, the experience you've got under your belt as a team, as a en masse, to go for it.
Yeah. What in talking about how you've measured this transformation, we've talked about it as transformation, but ultimately it's success, right? And what have been some of the did you set out with metrics or tools of measurement that we're going to measure if this was effective or not? Or was it really just a lot of like gut sense that it was working?
Well, no, I would say we're measuring. the success, because there is an A/B test in what we were doing before and now what we're doing today. And so, we may be in spaces, like I said before, with retail that we hadn't been before, which, that's basically 100%. We've done a great job because we weren't doing it that way before. But, when you look at what those pilot tests at retail have done with Grab a Boost of Blue, we had over 1,000 stores participating last year in this campaign. And those activations were showing that there was about 13 points over rest of market when they were implementing this program within their store during that period of time. And so, for those who actually activated with what we had kind of a display contest, which is traditional produce merchandising strategy, but those were enjoying 25% over the rest of market during that same period. So we are measuring it, and we're able to now go back to marketers, which is part of what helps to inspire what we call secondary enclosure on pack, which is what Heath's saying sees on the punnets, which is the tape that keeps it closed while consumers take it home. But that real estate, all of the other activations around it, it really pulls everybody together and helps communicate to a consumer, an encouragement of, putting this on their list if they hadn't thought about it when they were in the store, if they're thinking about it now. But typically we've been doing a good job on the digital side. So our digital advertising program also is a comparative of the past to the present. And so in 2022, we had over 250% increase in the fresh and frozen units sold during the period that we were testing, allowing with whether it's Instacart, the ad spend return on that, being able to see, almost 800% of increased perception or increased impressions within an area like Hulu. So we could see with those metrics, just in the comparison of before and after when we did or didn't have it, how this was performing. And that showed up in our UNA as well. So we could see, we did a usage and attitude study last summer, that there was not only an appreciation for the brand being in the market, so that there was recognition that it was there, but that there was an opportunity that we've been able to share with our leadership since, that the UNA shows that it's something that they would adopt, like they would wear it. We were asking the questions like, is this a lifestyle for you? Would Grab a Boost of Blue, does it mean more than just this call to action that, some might say it's as simple as, but blueberries are so beloved that we found that we're striking an emotional connection with this brand with consumers, that now we're really excited. When we kind of knew it, I'll let Heath talk about it. We were heading that direction. That's why I was saying, like, we were thinking about the future, but now that future is starting to be realized, and we're now focused on, how does this become a lifestyle call to action for consumers who really care about their health. And like I mentioned in the beginning, like even down to a U-Pick farm who can adopt this at their farm, encouraging consumers to come on and grab your Boost of Blue. Like literally they're going to come and grab it. So you could just started to see how it starts to play out in a merch department inside of a U-Pick, where they're wearing the hats and they're selling the U-Pick merch that includes Grab a Boost of Blue.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love seeing these behaviors unfold, but beneath this, first I want to just touch on all the statistical stuff, all the measurements, the things we've got to shoot for. That's the business of blueberries, right? And certainly within the creative team and within the wider agency, I've always held to the fact that we need to understand that business, arguably sometimes better than our client themselves, because we need to understand what the potential is for a win or a loss. We need to understand how we can push beyond maybe what their initial metrics might be, because this isn't a one and done. These lines are not one and done. This is an ecosystem we're triggering in order to get results all right across the board. And so when I talk to the multiple layers of the line, you need to be able to buy into this story. And it's exciting to see people proud to throw the T-shirt on. You've almost got like a tribal thing happening within the industry. Finally, we're feeling connected by this one thing. I also think culturally, this concept of grabbing, like if we want to change things, you don't tiptoe around it anymore. And we've certainly seen the cultural zeitgeist of reactions to the climate, reactions to social injustice. Like, you don't tiptoe around those things. You've got to act on them. And I feel like this is such an action position for the organization that was really well timed.
So cool. And I guess I'm also interested, we did talk about these metrics, right? Like we talked about the measurements, but I'm curious from your perspective, Heath, the sort of non-quantifiable wins from an agency perspective. What were some of the big victories in this transformation that you were able to sort of hang your hat on?
Well, seeing the doors, there's an old adage that, great ideas sort of write themselves, which sort of sounds weird because they don't. But I think what it means is that opportunities keep presenting themselves and you see that they gain their own momentum. So if you think of if you think of things like the Just Do It's and the Got Milks and so on, like they get this head of steam about them. And I'm not for a second saying we've hit that level yet. But, certainly you're challenging yourself to enter the vernacular of people. I think once you've got into that space that it's automatic, like you're in a part of people's brains that's almost in the sort of religious center where like it's just a part of what I do, that is super exciting to me. That's when we head toward this concept of making blueberries the world's greatest fruit, because I just do. Shopping is a very mechanical thing at that consumer. It is a very mechanical thing. Don't shop hungry. We all know that, right? Because it's a different equation. But when mum's heading or dad's heading or whoever's heading to the supermarket to make the purchases for the week, they go into this automatic mode. There's a lot going on, and we need to be in that place where it's just there. And it's just I say I want it in the brain, so it's a no-brainer, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
It's on the list.
It's on the list, mate.
Yeah. On the list. I like it. Well, speaking of lists, as we sort of wrap up some of our key takeaways from today, we've talked about transformation. We've talked about the creativity that goes into it. We've talked about bringing teams of lots of diversified perspectives and minds along for the ride. What else have we not touched on today that really kind of channels up to like transformation and making it a reality?
Well, I guess one thing I would just recognize in the work that Padilla did is something that I think for your audience and in this sort of space is keeping the client, right? And I think, Heath mentioned that, we have a relationship with Padilla that goes back, almost 30 years. And it would have been easy for us to send an RFP out and pull the creative in from as many creative agencies as possible. But to Padilla's credit, and I think, our approach to this was, let's take advantage of what history and tenure is there and pull that all forward. So that blue thread that we talked about is this tenure combined with a great creative, combined with the support that came out of that room that day. And so, credit to the creative team and certainly the commitment from a great partnership in being able to pull that all the way through and in the end have a product that everybody's really excited about, the relationship still intact, all those things that we still may be taking for granted as an institution, which is things like the health research and the history and the relationship, all still a part of this go forward for making this the best work that we've ever accomplished as a team together. So it was a challenge. It was challenged, to the agency that we had, in place at the time, but it could have been very different, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is to the credit of the creative team, the agency, and the relationship, you still have this relationship that continues in pushing more consumers to consider why blueberries and putting it on the list and making sure that people are just as excited as they've ever been, but with a very future forward strategy. So I think that was a really important part of this as an effort together. Yeah.
Thanks. I feel like I need to give you a hug.
I was going to say, a feel good moment to end on here.
Look, the creative team is certainly an important part of it, but it is a complete team effort. I mean, our food experts, our retail experts, our research experts, everyone that we have forms this matrix, and we use a word, this ensemble team concept, where we bring all our experts in the agency to help solve the problem that Casey and the team present to us. And kudos to the wider team for letting go in that moment and really resetting the way that we thought and approached about this. I think the other thing that was a great learning for the agency in that moment was, no matter how tactical you think it is, no matter how business-oriented you think it is, never underestimate the importance and power of your creative juices as an organization, right? Not just your creative team, but the organization and the way you think and approach something. The result of that is this concept, this grab a boost of blue, that hasn't just energized an organization, like it's enabled a transformation right across that entire industry. That's pretty powerful. That's really exciting stuff. And it keeps us going. That's the boost for us as an organization.
So there's such great thoughts to end on. I do want to thank you both for being here with us today. I'm hoping everyone is, hungry for blueberries now after this episode. But
right, amen.
We have with us today, this was Padilla's Heath Ruddock and the U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council's Casey Cronquist. Thank you both for being with us. This has been a really fun conversation.
Yeah, the pleasure is ours. Thank you.
Thanks. See you, everyone.
This has been the Provoke Media podcast, and thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Provoke podcast, brought to you by Provoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.